Welcome to Mic Drop, the podcast where relevancy is irrelevant and we don't give a shit about your feelings.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's as always an honor and a pleasure to welcome my next podcast guest to the desk. He is a husband and father. He spent 13 years on active duty, 7.5 of which as a SEAL. Also has a Fleet Marine Force pin with his time with the Marines. He has an Army Commendation Medal with V for Valor, as well as 2 Navy Achievement Medals with V for Valor, which is code for brass balls. He's an actor. He's been in Transformers, as well as a new film on its way out called 6 Underground, both directed by Michael Bay. He's got a jockey commercial contract that'll make you fucking blush. He is also a writer with a bunch of secret squirrel shit in the works that he may or may not get into here in the podcast. And last but certainly not least, he is a minister, i.e. a man of the cloth, both in youth and men's conferences and the involvement in I Am Second, which is a big popular deal around here in Texas. The Black Panther played him in a movie. Please welcome to the stage, Remi. And I'm going to let you pronounce your last name because I fucked it up every time.
No, it's so good. Adeleke, and it was actually Killmonger. Yeah. Killmonger pretty much stole my story and had it in the movie.
Yeah. Well, so, you know, thinking back on and reading through your book, which is really fascinating, by the way, I learned a lot about you. And it actually gave me some good perspective that, you know, some things that made me think differently, both about our community, about your story, about life in general, frankly. I mean, and I'll tell you, like, with the amount of people I've had on and the books I've read that, you know, I've seen and read a lot, like that's not a real easy task. And so my hat's off to you, man. Like
Thank you, brother.
The book is really good, and there's a lot of really good insight in there that I frankly wasn't expecting. Not that I didn't have high hopes or thought that it would suck, but there were things in there that it really made me think about things.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, so I appreciate you writing. It's really
I appreciate it. Yeah, I tried to just write it in a unique, different way and just really give a different perspective.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic, and it's one that. You know, as a white boy in you know, rural suburban Midwest Iowa, like, you know, your upbringing couldn't have been much different than mine.
Yeah.
And there's a couple notes I have written in here that I found actually laughing out loud in the book. Just some of the similarities and some of the stark differences. Like it's pretty cool. But but the recurring theme that again we'll get into. But the similarities that we all have from our community that generally speaking, make us end up being where we're at. So,
absolutely,
really, really good threads throughout the book. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
I like to start out with just a couple of kind of random questions to kickstart things, and then we'll get into some of the specifics. I do have a first, ladies and gentlemen, on the Mic Drop podcast. Is that I have two questions coming from my kids. I have them right now, and so I asked them to generate a couple of questions. They're over on the couch smiling, little shit-eating grins over there. And so I asked them to generate 2 questions for me to ask you, so I'm going to start with those.
I'm sure they're good.
The first one is, what is the favorite movie you've acted in?
Oh, well, who?
Yeah, you got to pick favorites and piss somebody off.
Yeah. I would have to say the last one.
6 Underground one?
6 Underground.
Yeah.
That was the last one because I got another gig. You know?
Was that the most involvement in terms of?
Yeah, because I started out as a consultant. So I started out in pre-production in July of 2018 and working with the actors, getting them up to speed on tactics and fitness and that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then I got on set in Italy in September. And I started out, and as soon as I got to Italy, I was thrown on set, acting, had a monologue, had to deliver a speech, won't give away too much. Yeah. And then went straight into a lot of the advising. So it was cool because I got a chance to kind of work with the script a little bit. Also, help with different departments. So it was cool. I got the full spectrum there.
Yeah, man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, so you kind of had involvement in almost every aspect of the film in that regard, huh?
Yeah. As far as the script, it wasn't like I was coming in changing, but there were times when the actors or they was like, hey, what should we say here, or what should we say there to make it more authentic, and I would kind of give some input there, and then being on set, how should the actor move into a shot if they have a weapon in their hand and they're going down a hallway, what would that look like, setting that up. So I was really involved a lot. It was cool, and that's what really inspired me to kind of get more into the writing side of things. You know what I mean? To create my own content, because it was like, okay, if I could come on a set and do all of this advising to get this film, as authentic as possible, why don't I just create something and start from the foundational part, the script being authentic.
But to me, in speaking about authenticity, one of the things that I really like about Michael Bay, and there's a handful of other big name directors out there that I think employ the same tactic of bringing in no shit experts in whatever movie they're trying to portray, and this will date me a little bit, but the first Transformers, I was one of the assholes that got to go up in that and
running around.
I mean, my screen time is about 2.5 seconds, I think, of the several days I spent up there. It's the part where the group of Sector 7 assholes surrounds Bumblebee.
Oh, in the channel? Was it in the LA channel?
And freezes them. I don't say shit. You can't recognize me. I'm just one of those dick bags.
You got paid though, right?
I did. It was a neat experience. Like having no background in that and no real idea other than what I thought. It was, there were some things that were the same and some that were very different. But I guess my point is that the collaboration between him and Harry Humphreys and all of the people that were involved, just for something as simple as making the guys who were handling guns look like they knew what they were doing, instead of a lot of them where you're like, Jesus.
Exactly.
So to me, it was refreshing to see that there's at least some of that attention to detail that's so big in our community.
No, absolutely. I know Pete Berg, he does the same thing. Antoine Fuqua, he's really big on bringing guys in. And so, that
makes a big difference, and instead of being the guy that sits there like MST3K talking shit about the movie the whole time. How everything's messed up.
Armchair quarterback. I was worried at times. I was like, man, like if this doesn't come out right, this is going to come back on me.
You're going to be that guy responsible.
Yeah, man. Everybody, because in the credits they're going to say military advisor Remi Adeleke. Oh, that turd screwed the movie, dude.
That's good stuff. So this next question is actually a little more profound than I was expecting. So hats off to the kids. What's the most out of character choice you've ever made?
Ooh, what's the most out of character choice?
Calling you out early on the podcast.
From what time period?
Anything that pops up in your life, right? Thumbs up, thumbs down.
any period of life. Wow, there's a whole lot. I got to nail it down. I would say when I was younger, my mom, she raised me and my brother right. She did the best she could to make sure that we were, upstanding citizens. But when I was younger and I started getting involved in the stuff I was getting, like I started out stealing from my mom. I talk about it in the book. And I stole an item from my mom. I won't give it away. But I stole an item from my mom that was really, I would say it was very out of character, but I was desperate. I was desperate to have money, to have respect, to have that power, and to have what I saw what other people had. And my mom raised me better than that to do that. So I would say that was definitely out of my character.
And let that be a lesson to you two ladies. Don't be stealing shit from your mom. I know you know better. All right. Best hazing story. I always like to ask military guys best hazing story, whether it's you or, allegedly to somebody else, right? But
I mean, as you know, in the teams we have hazing story.
It's brutal.
You know what? I'm gonna leave the teams out of it because I'm sure you get a lot of team guys give a hazing story. I'm gonna go to the Marine Corps.
Oh, is that right?
Because when I was a corpsman in the Marines, dude, the hazing was crazy. And I'll tell the story about me. So we were in Kuwait, I would go take a shower. Because there were the mobile showers, so you had to live in a tent. I lived in a tent with like 60 other dudes, right? The whole platoon. I was in 81 mortars platoon at
Sounds
this point.
Sounds like a sword fight.
Yeah, it wasn't fun. And I walked to the showers that were probably 100 feet away, and I just had my towel. And that's how I would do sometimes. And when I went in, I took a shower, and the corporals took my towel, dude.
Yeah.
So I had to walk naked. I didn't care at this point. I'm like, I don't.
They were
girls on. They were girls on the the different tents down from us. I was like, I don't care, dude. Like, I ain't ashamed, dude. So,
were you doing the helicopter walk?
I won't go that far. but yeah, I walked naked back to the. And the funny thing was, the entire platoon got in trouble for it.
Oh, no shit.
Because the XO saw me.
Yeah.
And he was like, what? What's going on here? And then I was like, dude, somebody took my towel. I know who it was. I'm not going to snitch, but this is the outcome from it. So
let me ask you this. I mean, I know, in the teams it's pretty brutal. Were they as physically brutal as they are?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Everybody.
Oh, yeah. I share a story in my book where I really got upset because there was one Marine that was doing, I forgot they call like turtle backing or turtle, something crazy, where he took his helmet off and he was beating this other Marine on the top of his helmet. Yeah. And I was just like, I remember I stood up. I was like a new guy, so to speak, but I couldn't take it anymore. So I stood up and I let the corporal have it and settled the situation.
Yeah, I mean, to me, hazing's it's like with anything. I mean, there's balance that needs to be adhered to, and it's easy for it to get out of hand, especially if it's after hours and there's beer involved or whatever. But I also think on the flip side, like, it's also a necessary remediation tool. I know I was, and I'm sure you were a recipient of it, to where it does get the job done. And it teaches a valuable life lesson sometimes.
Yeah, especially when you're a new team guy, your chest is a little poking out, man. It kind of keeps you aligned.
Keep you a little grounded.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of references to the influence that hip hop and different music has played in your life.
Yeah.
Which I've got a couple notes written down. We'll talk about that here in a bit. But to mix it up a little bit, I'm going to ask you what your favorite country song is. And just full discllosure, I fucking hate country.
Dude, I can't tell you. I don't know. I don't know the name
of
any
bust
country
out
song, dude.
some honky tonk shit.
No, I don't. I'm sorry, it's Garth. I'm not even gonna play the game, dude, because I don't know any real country stars or any names or anything. Yeah. So sorry.
No, I do.
Sorry, country fans, dude.
Yeah, I mean, you're not messing with one here. I mean, to me, it's like I grew up in Iowa. I've lived here for over a decade. I just don't like it. There's just nothing about it I like. And if that pisses you off, you can choke yourself.
There you go.
My two right hand people over here are giving me shit for not saying it in the last two, so I had to throw that in there. But all right. So last question, and this is one I'd just like to ask everybody: is what is like on a normal day? What does your morning routine look like?
Morning routine. I get up. I usually have a devotional time, so I start off with reading the Bible. I read like a few scriptures in the Old Testament, a few in the New Testament. Then I have a time of prayer that kind of gets settled and get set and prepared for the day. And then I juice. I juice every morning. I juice fresh fruits, and I don't eat breakfast, so I juice fresh fruits and vegetables, primarily vegetables, broccoli and stuff, just to kind of get my stomach and everything cleansed. And then from there, I take my kids to school. And then from there, hit the gym. And then after I get back from the gym, it's writing, emails, work, mainly writing, and getting the day done until 4:30.
Yeah. So on the gym routine part, two things. Do you throw any fats or anything like that into the juice mix?
No. I keep it all just straight fruit, vegetables, ginger. Yeah.
On the workouts, do you subscribe to any particular CrossFit style?
I do. I call it circuit training. Yeah. Some people would call it CrossFit, but I do circuit training. I don't go for speed. I don't go for time. I have certain routines that I do, and I just want to get it done. Yeah. But I'm not sprinting through it. But I do try to keep my heart rate up as much as possible. So
kind of a happy medium bang for your buck type.
Yeah, and it sucked. My workouts suck. I mean, my assistant Brad will tell you, because he works out with me sometimes. They suck, but I'm not out there. As you know, with the job that we did and going through training, all that, our bodies are jacked.
I know. I tore my full tear of my tricep a couple months ago.
So you know the deal, man. Yeah, that sucks, man. Sorry to hear that, bro.
Just getting brittle,
Yeah, man.
But yeah, I mean, that's life, I guess.
Yeah. So I'm not, so because of that, like I got, arthritis in my knee, torn labrum, all that.
Yeah.
Torn labrum in my hip. So I'm not out there trying to like keep up with the 20-year-old.
Yeah. No shots at the title.
Nah, that's boat to sail, dude.
No, you and me both. I had a humbling lesson learned.
Yeah.
Grappling and tearing my tricep.
Dang,
but
sucks, man.
that shit happens.
Sorry, brother.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right, so in terms of your childhood, obviously there's in the context of what most U.S. military service members and especially in the SEAL or special operations community upbringings, yours was certainly atypical.
Yeah.
Growing up in the Lagos region, of Nigeria, what you can remember, what was that kind of like, just in terms of, what it triggers in your mind as being different from, say, now how your kids are being raised, and what was that like?
Yeah, we lived a great life in Victoria Island, Nigeria. My dad, he was very successful, very wealthy. He was a millionaire. He engineered one of the first man-made islands in the world. Banana Island. Yeah. And because of his success, in business and as an entrepreneur, we lived a fantastic life, from what I remember and from what, the pictures and everything my mom tells me. So, we didn't want for anything. We had all kinds of maids and nannies and cooks and drivers and all of that. Yeah. So life was fantastic the first 5 years of my life. Yeah. And so I would say that my kids now, because of my success in the film and TV industry and business and other things, they're living a life almost equivalent to my first 5 years of life.
Yeah. Do you think that because the contrast from that first 5 years, then you move here and a certainly tragic and untimely passing of your father, especially in reading it, like you guys were here, you spent that week in Detroit with him.
Yeah.
How I know it was a big impact, but at the time, how did that impact you at that age, especially?
People ask me that question all the time, and I say, I credit my mom. She did a fantastic job at protecting us from the reality of what happened. Yeah. So she was really able to, we didn't know the difference. Mm-hmm. It was, and that's the weird thing. People ask me, how can you know them? You got to remember I was 5 years old. Yeah. So at a 5-year-old, as long as you could play with your toys and you got food in your stomach, nothing's, much different, Yeah. So in my early years, 5, 6, 7, I would say I didn't really know, I didn't understand death either. As a matter of fact, I remember when my mom told my brother and I that our father died. I'll never forget it. She placed my brother on her right side. She placed me on her left side. We were on a red couch, and she said, "Your father's gone, and he's not coming back. He died." And we didn't. My father traveled so much for business that we just thought he was on another long business trip. Yeah. And so as soon as she told us, and she wasn't crying, which was another crazy thing. So obviously she's not crying, she's not emotional, and I know she was doing that because she was trying to keep it together for herself. We're not crying. We're just like, oh, okay. And we just went back to playing. Like, I'll never forget it. Me and my brother went into a bedroom and we just started playing with toys as if nothing happened. So again, the reality of that change didn't really hit me until I was like 8 years old. Yeah. And then I looked around the bedroom I was in with my brother, and I looked at the lad, because there were times when my mom didn't have enough food to feed herself. She just had just enough food to feed my brother and I. Yeah. And I remember, she would get so mad at me when I would spit out onions. And I didn't get it I hated onions as a kid, but I didn't get that she was upset because she was giving me the little bit of food that she could have eaten, even if it was just onions. So she did a great job at hiding what was going on.
One of the things I didn't see it mentioned in the book, but I found myself asking, with your father being kind of an internationally renowned businessman and brilliant in terms of all these different degrees he had, and educated in London, and just like, holy shit, like this guy is super talented. But your mom was from New York. How did they meet?
That's a funny story. That's the real Coming to America.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
a lot of people talk about Coming to America. I was like, this is the real Coming to. As a matter of fact, I'm helping my mom. She's writing her book now, and I'm helping her with it, which is going to be almost like a prequel to this book. But my mom, she was into the arts, as I talk about in the book, heavily into the arts. And my dad, he was an art collector, and he was into the arts. So one day he was in New York for a business meeting at the World Trade Center. And my mom decided, hey, I want to go to the Metropolitan Museum of Natural History to look at this exhibit. It was actually an exhibit on Yoruba art, which is the tribe I'm from. And so my mom went to the exhibit, and my dad, he was in town, and he knew that there was an exhibit on, because our tribe is a Yoruba tribe. He knew that there was an exhibit on the Yorubas' artwork and sculptures, and so he went, and that's how they met. My mom, they were looking at a piece of art at the same time, and he turned over and said hello to her, and she said hello, and then they went about their business, and then they ended up at another painting or somewhere in the museum at the same time again, and that's what sparked. They ended up getting, and my mom, she was a flight attendant, so she had her own life. She had her own life as a flight attendant in New York, and she didn't know anything about my dad. But obviously, he swept her off her feet.
Can I at least ascertain and hope that your dad had better game than the instance of you in the San Diego bar saying I'd name you fine? So I read that. I was like, there's no way he pulled that off.
Hey, I was honest, man. I was honest in telling the truth about what happened. But as you know, at the time, I wasn't honest. But he had way more game than me. He had a British. He was Nigerian, but he also spoke patois, which is like the natural pidgin, which is the natural Nigerian English language. And then he spoke Yoruba, he spoke French, and then he could fluctuate between an English and a Nigerian accent. So he was suave, you know. So he had way more game than me. They got married 5 months after they met.
Oh, no doubt.
Like 5 months after they met, they got married. And my mom and my dad was like, hey, I have an amazing life in Africa if you want to come. And so she was like, sure. And she moved to Africa with my dad.
Man, that's wild.
Yeah, so that's the real coming to America, because he was a chief.
I know it.
And again, in Yoruba culture and in a lot of African culture, you know, royalty is not known as king, queen. It's known as chief. And our last name, Adeleke, means the crown is above. So the crown is above. So we come from that royalty lineage from the Yoruba tribe. Yeah. So it's coming to America.
No, I know. I mean, reading it and there's the reference to that, but you can't help but think like it's like the movie is almost verbatim. Yeah. and what's interesting is that movie came out around the same time we were going through it.
Yeah, right? yeah. They met in 81.
Yeah.
Or 80
a couple years later, Eddie Murphy's playing the role. It's awesome.
Yeah, somebody stole the story, man.
I know. Getting rights on that. Yeah. All right, so your dad ends up passing. Now you guys find yourself in the apartment that he had in the Bronx.
Yeah.
I've not spent a lot of time in New York, but enough to, you know, be fairly familiar with the kind of the different personalities and characters of each borough, and I find that one of the more fascinating things about New York is how different each borough is. But obviously, the Bronx is pretty well renowned for being a pretty rough spot, and a lot of famous people and such have come from there and have, you know, frequently opined about the rough nature of that place. But one of the things that I thought was really cool and frankly was kind of jealous of, hearing about you and the crew that you ran around with. It reminded me, you've seen the movie The Sandlot?
Yeah.
I mean, it reminded me of that.
That's how it was, man. We were a bunch of misfits. We did everything together. As a matter of fact, a lot of us are still super connected, and we get together. But those was some. A lot of people ask me, you know, how did the Bronx prepare you for, you know, military, buds, you know, the community and all that. And there's so many answers to that, but one of the answers I can give is just that the community of kids, man, that we grew up, because we were outside, dude. We wasn't like video games were just up and coming. You know, we played Sega Genesis and stuff like that here and there, but we were outside running, you know, cracking jokes on each other, pushing each other. I mean, me and my buddy Ricardo, we joke about it all the time. We say, you know, kids nowadays would not survive if they got in a time machine and hung out with it. You would not think we were friends the way we treated each other.
No, I know. I mean, it's almost like team guys do, right?
Yeah,
man. It's like you're harder on each other than everybody else. But you know, it's neat to see that. Just, you know, that upbringing with that crew, it was pretty cool to read, and like I said, it made me think of The Sandlot. But as you start to kind of get older and go through some of the trials and tribulations of school and high school, with your mom being an educator herself, and some of the issues you ran into with some of the teachers, one of the things again that I kind of gleaned from the book that isn't something that, it's something I've thought about, but not so much in the same context in terms of the disparity between funding for schools that have, a lot of either subsidized housing or much poorer real estate values, which translates to lower property tax, which translates to lower funding, and how big of a struggle it is, and it's, again, it's something that I think all of us, with kids, consciously and subconsciously think about a little bit in terms of trying to be in neighborhoods that
absolutely,
that have better schools. I mean, everybody's doing it, and it, it's frustrating as an American, I think, sometimes to, I don't know what the fucking right answer is, because it's, trying to delegate funding and whatever to fix that system is a huge task, and I don't think the Department of Education is really. Doesn't seem like they're really that focused on that.
No. And one thing that they are doing in the Bronx that has been helping is the charter schools. So you have a lot of these charter schools that are now popping up, to help supplement. Because the public school system, at least when I was growing up, and I know now from people, I would assume now from some people I've had conversations with, it's not good, man.
No, I know it. Well, and in my own, actually, I've been through a lot of different school systems in the last decade, and there is a huge disparity between well-funded and not well-funded. They have their own sets of problems, but to me, it needs to be dealt with probably more on a more federal level, where things are disseminated a little more evenly. But
I agree, and I wrote that in the book. I wanted to be intentional because I'm hoping that in some way, the way I wrote the majority of this book is a lot of people are going to pick up this book because I'm a team guy.
Oh, yeah.
That's just the reality of it. So what topics can I touch on that are going to hopefully help influence some kind of change?
Yeah.
And so when I was talking about the educational system, that was more strategic, and I hope that something will change. Yeah. Maybe it might spark something in the federal government, or somebody with influential power who reads it and says, wow, if this guy had to go through all of this from an educational standpoint, fight against the tide to get to where he is today. Yeah. We need to make this easier.
Yeah. And it certainly wasn't lost on me. It was definitely something I pulled from it. And, to me, the short answer is, having federal funding that closes or evens that gap a little bit. Amen. So that they all have at least similar funding, But,
absolutely, that makes sense. That makes sense. I like that. I like it. Yeah. For president, man.
Come on. I don't know about
Mike
that.
President, man.
I got too many skeletons for president. One of the things that I found again as a big similarity that you and I have in growing up is how big of a role music played.
Oh yeah.
And especially, I had and continue to have a phenomenal set of parents, specifically a father, which. Yeah. Tragically, you lacked in that upbringing. But I found it really neat that Notorious B.I.G. of all people,
man,
kind of played a father role. It's a mixed blessing, I guess, in terms of the influence. But to me, that's one of the neat things about music. And for me, it was more on the metal and rock and roll stuff. But it was just something that. Both kind of an escape and a motivator, and you could relate to certain things and whatever. And so, if you could kind of just explain the influence of the hip hop culture, especially being from where you're at in that time frame, it being such a big deal. Can you talk a little bit?
No, absolutely. In the late '80s and the early '90s, when I was coming up, hip hop culture, music, rap, it was just blowing up. And as a young African American growing up in the inner city, and not having a father, I was looking for my identity. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I was just looking for something that to cling to, and use as a guidepost for me, as somewhat of a blueprint. And so music, kind of hip hop's blossom came at, I would say, the perfect time, because I say the perfect time because a lot of the things that I gleaned from it, it led me to do some bad things. But when I finally gained the wisdom to do the right things, I was able to glean the right things, from it. So for example, even that hustler mentality you hear about in the music, Jay-Z talked about, I love being a hustler, Biggie talked about that. P. Diddy talked about that. Nas, Mobb Deep, all of these guys would always talk about be a hustler, go out there, get after it. And in so many words. And so I took that. And again, I started out again stealing from my mom, and that progressed to stealing from jobs, to stealing from stores, to selling drugs, to running scams. But ultimately, in the essence of it was, I want to be somebody. I want to do something like these rappers. What they're talking about is ultimately, what they're talking about is be somebody, become successful, and this is the way to become successful. So I was trying to become successful, but I was essentially following their blueprint. It wasn't until later in life, and even now, where that hustler mentality is still within me, and I figured out how to use it the appropriate way, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And one of the excerpts that I have highlighted that I pulled from it that in relation to this, that kind of struck a chord with me a little bit is, and it goes, Mom did the best job she could, but as I grew older and taller, my fear of her maternal presence began to wane, and the absence of my father loomed large. Yeah. And to me, in conjunction with, it sounds like, that the influence from Chad the barber upstairs and then
people on the block,
furthering like that influence from that culture of music played a huge paternal role in your life, right?
Absolutely. That I tell people all the time, hip hop was my father. Yeah. And for a lot of young African American kids, minority kids, Spanish kids, Dominicans, Puerto Ricans in the inner city, hip hop is their father. Yeah.
Well, and so, leading into kind of the next part of the book that, that I think is significant to talk about is, surrounding hip hop culture, especially at that time. I remember, I'm a few years older than you, but I was in high school when the Rodney King situation happened, and I know at my school, like it exploded racial tensions. I think it did for the entire country.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think there's kind of an ever present feeling of anti-police, anti-government, anti-authority, in a lot of music, but specifically hip hop culture. And what I thought was really cool and kind of almost a surreal foreshadowing was the motivation that you drew from seeing both Bad Boys and The Rock. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So my mom, she was heavily into the arts, as I mentioned, and she loved film, and she still loves film. She's always viewed it as an art form, and she would take us to the movie. She would save up her pennies, save up her money, and then she would make it her business to try and take my brother and I to a movie to expose us. She would expose us to all kinds of different arts, but to expose us to the art form. And I remember one time I went to go see Bad Boys, and man, it was a game changer for me, because that was the first time I saw two African American men who were me, but they were police officers and they were cool. You know what I'm saying? And so when I saw that movie, even though I hated the police, as a young kid, even though I hated the police, it still got the wheels turning in my head. Maybe I can be a hero in that sense and still be cool, so it did open my eyes from that perspective. And then when I saw The Rock, in '96, that was the first time I heard of Navy. I didn't know what a Navy SEAL was. We don't get billboards of Navy SEALs in the Bronx or Brooklyn or any of that stuff. And so when
not a lot of scuba diving either.
Not a lot of scuba diving, not a lot of pools, period. You know what I mean? It's the Bronx, And so, when I saw that movie and I saw these guys coming out of the water and they had their suppressors and their wetsuits and all that, the kid in me was like, yo, I'm gonna be a Navy SEAL. That's what I'm gonna do. And so obviously I filed that away. But when I finally did end up making the decision to go into the military, even though that decision was a fight for me because of what you mentioned. I hated the police, I hated authority, I hated the government, all of that. It was those films that really was kind of solidified what I would do in the military.
Yeah, and to me, one of the cool things about that is is that sense of purpose and motivation and kind of almost a light switch moment.
Yeah.
From having hip hop culture be a father, and having a really negative connotation to police and authority, to now, watching two movies that, in essentially 4 or 5 hours, can completely change your life. And one of the things that I thought was cool, just that kind of surreal foreshadowing is, like, imagine knowing at that time that, 15, 20 years later, like you're going to be in a movie directed by the same fucking guy.
I know that's the, and that's what big part of my faith is. Like, I'm just like, man, like, even when because I wasn't always a man of faith. I wasn't always a Christian, and I would fluctuate between atheism and agnosticism depending on the day of the week. But, at that time, I definitely wasn't, I didn't believe in anything, but in retrospect, I truly believe that, it was God leading me, especially when you look at the odds of what are the odds of these two films inspiring me, and then this guy putting in me in my first 2 movies. Yeah. It's crazy. You know what I mean? It's like
totally crazy.
So those things like that where I'm just like, man, there is a God. You know what I mean?
Well, The Rock, for me, I actually saw that. I think it was a couple weeks before I went to boot camp.
Yeah.
Same kind of thing. Like, I was just like, I had already decided at that point, but...
you knew you wanted to be a frogman before The Rock?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so it wasn't like me jumping on the bandwagon, right?
Similarly, like, I didn't know shit about him. I read a Popular Mechanics article when I was a sophomore, and I was just like, holy shit, like, these guys are awesome, and from that, from then, and then I watched, every, movie or recruiting video, magazine, article, book, whatever, read Marcinko's books, and Point Man, and by Patches Watson, and dug everything I could up and started training at that point. And then The Rock was kind of icing on the cake because like I said, I was ready to leave a couple weeks later. But,
that's awesome. I bet that was motivated. Like The Rock comes out and you watch it, and then it's like I'm going to Buds, dude.
Well, there was a little bit of the like, shit, maybe I should be a Marine instead. They just got smoked by all these Marines. Like,
right.
But,
and people say, I tell people all the time, it's like, even though the SEALs got killed, man, I stuck with them.
Yeah.
But the story from the book. I almost went into the Marine Corps.
No, well, you got lucky that they didn't show up.
Yeah.
Oh, and reading it too, I have no doubt that recruiter was just trying to hook up with the recruiter that ended up saving your ass.
Oh yeah. He was.
I wasn't there, but we'll get into that. But
absolutely.
So that was during high school, and then like a lot of high school kids, myself included. Not so much that you couldn't be a good student. It was like you just didn't really give a shit. Similar to me, like I didn't do very well in high school because I just didn't really care.
Yeah.
But I kind of found it humorous, and I wanted to ask you that. So on the last day, to graduate, and I won't spoil too much of the book instances, but long story short is that your English teacher teaches you a pretty humbling lesson. Yeah. Basically saying, with your potential, you've got a lot of potential. Prove it to me by tomorrow morning, and you pull it off. And then like literally the next page, like, so I graduated high school and I start selling drugs.
Yeah.
Like, the dude taught you a pretty good lesson, and it, like, what was that all about?
That lesson again. What that lesson really instilled in me is I can achieve whatever I want to achieve. I can accomplish anything. Yeah. And at that time, I really wanted to make it big in the music business. I was a rapper. I've been rapping in high school, freestyle in high school. I had a crew of dudes that we were rapping. And not only did I want to be a rapper, but I wanted to own my own record company. Yeah. So I had started my record company. And part of the reason why I got into the drugs and the scams and all the stuff I was doing was because I was like, again, that incident with the teacher told me you can accomplish anything. Yeah. So I figured now I can use these drugs and this scams and all of this stuff to make the money to accomplish my dream of owning a record company.
Means to an end.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So I wasn't really, I didn't sell the drugs because I wanted the money so that I can invest in the business. Yeah.
One of the things that, I found myself thinking, and I think it a lot of times when I see like career criminals or professional criminals, out here in rural Texas, you see a lot of people running meth or just doing stupid shit. But is that like the amount of time and energy and effort and creativity that you put into avoiding shit? Like if you focus that on something,
I know, right? You'd be a billionaire.
Between, like hustling, the cell phone scams and selling drugs and stealing shit and all this other stuff. But I guess hearing you say it's a means to an end for the for the record label. I'm curious, like. It seems like when you had the opportunity or you're presented with the opportunity to go to Def Jam, right, and present, some of your guys' work for them, and they're basically like, it's just not really there. Yeah. I mean, can you talk us through that process and how humbling and shitty that was?
Yeah, it was my last option, essentially. Because the money was running out and I was desperate. And you know how it is when you're desperate and then that door closes right in your face, man. And so when that door closed in my face, it was a horrible feeling. And it was at that point where I knew that this whole music thing wasn't going to work out anymore. Yeah. But I didn't. I was like, what am I going to do with my life? Yeah. I mean, that was the feeling for me, because it was like in my mind, I was like, man, I had failed at so much. I had failed at being a son to my mother. I had failed at being a brother to my brother. I had barely graduated high school because of the situation that happened. I failed at essentially hustling, and now this record company is failing, and I have nothing to show for, because literally I had nothing to show for. So it was depressing. Yeah. It really was depressing. Yeah.
Did any of the crew from Eighth Wonder, did any of them ever end up making it or doing anything?
No. As a matter of fact, I put together these cutting room floor videos of stories that didn't make it into the book, and plug that. It's on YouTube, Transform Book YouTube page. But anyway, I interviewed people from the time who knew me before I knew myself, the friends I grew up with, and they shared these stories about me that didn't make it into the book. And in one of the stories, my boy Charles, we used to call him Showtime, he kind of gives an update on where some of the guys are, and a few of them are still rapping. Really? They're still trying to make it in the industry. As a matter of fact, a funny story, after I finished, well, it's not funny, but it kind of is. But after Transformers came out, I was in enough of the film where I was allowed to go on a press tour, a little bit of a press tour. So I did the Today Show and different news outlets, and then I ended up doing Hoda's Sirius radio station interview. And after I came down from the Sirius offices, it was these twins. We used to call them the twins. They approached me. They're like, "Yo, man, who?" They didn't recognize me. But they were with my record company back in the day. The video's on my Instagram. You can go on my Instagram and see the whole situation unfold.
So they run into you and don't recognize you?
Yeah, so they come up to me and like, man, what celebrity are you? What celebrity are you? And I'm like, I'm Remi, dude. Remi, we used to run together. And they're like, what? It's like, man, you're a celebrity, man. And then let's take a picture, because all they do is stand outside of that building. If you go on their Instagram, you'll see them with Oprah, all the celebrities. That's their thing. And so we take a picture. I'm like, yo, it's Remi, man. And they was like, Sean John. I'm like, yeah, man. It's like, oh, you watch the videos on my Instagram, but it's so funny. But they're still trying to, and they gave me their new album. And they're still trying to make it in the music business, so people are still getting after it.
So, two questions: do you still ever, rap just for the hell of it? And do you have any aspirations to get back into having a label or doing any of that?
You know what? First part of the question: no, I don't rap.
Not even in the shower.
Even in the shower. I see it's transitioned more into my writing. Like I wrote a poem in one of the opening chapters of my book about the Bronx, and so I do write. I still do write, but I'm writing in a different way, writing films and poems and stuff. Yeah. But as far as bringing the company back to life, funny you bring that up, because 3 weeks ago I actually got incorporated. Eighth Wonder Entertainment is back in business, but now it's a production company. Yeah. So cool. So that it was a pretty cool story, because I went to go incorporate it, and I was like, I don't want it to be Eighth Wonder Entertainment, because I already had the record company as Eighth Wonder Entertainment in New York. York. And so I had it as Eighth Wonder Productions. But the state came back and said that name's taken, so you got to go with entertainment. So I was like, hey, Eighth Wonder back together again.
I mean, you have kind of like a Ja Rule sound almost.
Yeah, do I?
You could pull that out.
We'll see.
So the transformation between graduating high school, doing the cell phone gig, ultimately feeding the entrepreneurial spirit of trying to get your record label done. One of the things that took place during that time, if my calculations are accurate from looking at the dates, is that 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
And I guess for me, I found it a little surprising that it wasn't really mentioned in terms, especially living in the fucking Bronx.
Yeah.
That it wasn't really mentioned other than kind of an afterthought that, the judge mentioned it at one time before they got rid of some of your warrant stuff. But living in the Bronx and that taking place, like what kind of impact did that have on you as a New Yorker?
Wow, yeah. I mean, the whole city came together after that happened. As a matter of fact, I remember the day by my mom. I'll never forget the day my mom woke me up and she's like, "You gotta watch the news. Like we're under attack and all that." And I put on the news, and then our buildings had the co-op we lived in had 17 each building had 17 floors. So me and this girl she was my girl back in the day or whatever, we went on the roof of her building, and we could see the smoke, we could see the buildings and the smoke and everything from the roof, because I mean we're in New York City, and it was just like, wow, like this is it was crazy. And a part of me, like the part of me that finally came out, wanted to do something. I was just like, man, how could somebody kill innocent people like that? So for a moment, there was a part of me that wanted to do something, but then, as the days passed and reality set in, and that same girl, her cousin was actually in the windows of the world. She died. They never found her.
Really?
Yeah, her cousin was in the windows of the world when the restaurant that was on the top of one of the towers, and they never found her. Man. So it affected the entire city. But that I mentioned it. I didn't mention it in this book, but I'm writing a devotional book now, and which is going to probably be the follow up to my current book. But it's more of a devotional. It doesn't really focus more on my life. It focuses more on the spiritual elements. But in it, I talk about how the city, there was such racial tension within New York City. I mean, even at that time, in my opinion. And I try to, in the book, I talk about how God can bring good things out of bad things. And yes, that was a horrific incident. I'm not minimizing that in any way. The good that came out of it was black people, white people, Asian people, Spanish people. We all came together for our city. So
everybody was American first.
Yeah, absolutely.
So essentially the record deal, like a house of cards, kind of comes down. And you come to the realization that this shit ain't happening. And so now the divine voice, upon waking up, tells you to join the military. Obviously in conjunction with some of the motivation from Bad Boys and The Rock. But I love the story, and I won't get, again, disclose all of the details, but essentially running to the recruiter, and your first contact is sitting down in a Marine office waiting for 15 minutes. Can you walk us through that?
So I went to after I had this battle with the voice, and again I go into detail in the book, so I'll kind of leave it for that. But I went to the Marine Corps recruiter's office first, not because I wanted to join the Marine Corps, because that was just one of the first offices that was open. So I went in there and sat down for 15 minutes. Coffee was on the desk, but nobody showed up. And then I got up, went next door, and I ran into. I want to call at the time. I was like, she's an angel. I was like, I ran into this angel,
the hot Puerto Rican angel.
Beautiful. Let me phrase that for keep a little piece. But a beautiful Puerto Rican recruiter, and she ran my background, and she found out I had 2 warrants out for my arrest. I had a warrant in New York, had a warrant in New Jersey, and I got up to leave the office because I was like, oh my gosh, why did I come do this? Now I'm gonna end up in jail. I thought she was gonna call the police on me, and instead she said, she asked me if I had a suit, and I said no. She said, do you got a collar shirt and some pants? I said, yeah. And she's like, come back. I can't remember if it was like the next day or next week or whatever. She said, come back and And I came back, and she took me to the judges. She was in her dress uniform.
Yeah.
And she took me to both judges, advocated on my behalf in order to get me into the military.
Yeah.
And a story that's not in the book, after I finished writing the book, my mom, she was the first person that read the whole book, and she was just like, wow. She was just like, Remi, you know what's going to happen one day? One day you're going to be at a book signing, and this recruiter is going to come up to you, and she's going to see how what she did changed the course of your life. And I was like, yeah, I really hope that happens one day. And as soon as my mom said that, because I had forgotten her name, as soon as my mom said that, I said, Ma, I know where I could find her name, because my mom was at my house in California. My mom still lives in New York, but she was in my house in California at the time. And she said, where? I said, I got my military record, because I had gotten my military record. So I run to my military record, I go through my files, and I find the day I signed in MEPS to get in, and her name was there. I Google her name, and I found out that she had died.
Yeah.
She died
of a kind of a rare
4 years, after she got me into the Navy, man. So yeah, but me and her family are really close now. I talked to her parents over the holidays, and
I mean, it's crazy to read, like especially the fact that she's a recruiter and the way that she stuck her neck out for you, and also basically was like, go to boot camp and bullshit the moment of truth.
That was another thing she told me. The New Yorker in her really came out, because she was from the Bronx. She said, listen, she said, when you go to the boot camp, there's going to be an evolution called Moment of Truth. And she had this thick Puerto Rican Bronx accent. She said, don't say nothing. Don't say nothing. She was like, they're gonna try and convince you. They're going to lie to you. And if you say something, you're going to get kicked out. Yeah. And she shook me a few times and said, make sure. And so, she told me. And she had fudged all my paperwork. Yeah. She had got everything cleared in time and fudged my paperwork in the MEPS for me to be able to get in time. Yeah. So it was all like, it all worked out perfectly. Yeah.
But, I mean, it's, again, I don't see recruiters doing that in today's day and age.
And the crazy thing is, I get hit up from kids all the time on social media, and it's just like, how did you get in the military? Like, I'm trying to get in. Like, I've made this mistake when I was 16 or 15, and I want to get into the military, but no one won't take me. Like, what can I do? And I honestly can't tell them what to do. And I was actually talking to a buddy of mine who's a recruiter in Philadelphia, in the hood in Philadelphia. And he was like, man, Remi, like, these kids have so much potential. I wish I can get them in, but they've done things, and the government's like, no. So that was another thing I wrote. I was trying to be strategic and intentional about was, there's some people that they deserve it. There's a lot of people who deserve a second chance, because
especially good people that it's a win-win. I mean, it gives them a second chance, and the U.S. military needs driven, motivated people that have skill sets. And there's a lot of them out there that. That would be well suited for that type of work. Yeah. So you make it through boot camp and corps school, and then you go to Pendleton. I've found myself laughing at kind of the rough edge Bronx mentality, and you're getting dressed down by HM3 Trotter, basically saying, "Hey, it's not, motherfucker, it's yes, HM3." And that seems to be kind of a recurring theme throughout the book. Is the authority piece tends to bite you in the ass a little bit. Can you just kind of briefly talk about the experience getting pap smears ready, and again, that's something I didn't know about you, that you were at a Marine base, doing regular hospital crap before you came to Buds the first time.
Yeah, man. It was like a surreal experience, because here I was thinking I was going to, join the Navy and pick up a gun and run around a forest, and here I am checking babies. It was humbling. Yeah. It was humbling, man. Checking in babies, giving them rectal temps and assisting on pap smears, and having to clean up, and going into rooms and women looking at me like, what are you doing in this room with the doctor? And I'm just like, I don't want to be here either, but this is my job. Yeah. It was very, very humbling. I did learn a lot, though. I learned a lot about communication. Also, I learned a lot about being tender and respectful, So, I truly believe that being there, it was beginning to work out those kinks that needed to be worked out in my life, especially respectful towards, I won't say complete, because I wasn't completely respectful respectful towards women even after that, but be a bit more respectful towards women there. That was one thing. And I worked with nothing but women, which was another crazy thing, because all the women at the front, everybody at the front desk, they were all women. All the nurses I work with, I was like the only dude there,
It's not a bad deal.
No, it wasn't.
And one of the things that I thought was cool, and again, you see it multiple times throughout the book, is during that you request a schedule change, basically to work from, because you're at this time, like your ASVAB wasn't good enough to go to buds, the old ASVAB waiver joke, right?
Yeah.
But so some of your test scores weren't where they needed to be to make it to buds, which was your ultimate goal, and so you request a schedule change. Basically work 8 to noon and then be able to work out noon to 4. And then, that's a long fucking day.
Yeah.
But there's two things that struck me. Is another quote that I pulled that I wanted to read, because I see a recurring theme throughout our community that's very much this way. Mm-hmm. One thing that family and friends have always loved about me is the fact that I have an all-in personality. Yeah. And one thing that family and friends have always despised about me is the fact that I have an all-in personality. This trait of mine has always been a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because if I want something positive, I will run through hell and back to get it. And if it's a curse, because if I want something negative, I will run to hell without careful consideration, put my foot on the devil's throat, and snatch what I want out of his hands.
That's poetry right there.
It is. It is. Poetry in motion. But, that mentality, though, in conjunction with the request for a schedule change, and without a doubt, the most common denominator, I think, with special operations personnel is that self-starter. Like, you don't need to be told, hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z.
Exactly.
It's saying, here's my goal. I will figure out a way to get it.
Exactly. That was my mentality. And it had to be, because I didn't have anybody to show me how to work out. I didn't have anybody to teach me how to swim. I didn't have anybody to teach me how to study the ASVAB book, so I had absolutely no choice but to figure out a way where there is no way. And I would say that a lot of that came from my mom, because my mom would beat that into me and my brother all the time. Is there is no, you can't, you can, you know what I mean? If I could do it, if I could raise you and your brother on the amount of money that I'm making, if I could provide for you despite the odds, you could do it.
Yeah.
She was and she continues to be a master at figuring out a way where there simply seems like there is no way. And so when I got to that situation where I wanted to be a frogman, but I had absolutely no qualifications across the board. I didn't qualify in any area from being physically fit to the academics to anything to be a frogman. I was like, okay, I need to sit and figure out a way, and yeah, man.
Yeah, well, I found it pretty amusing that you couldn't fucking swim.
Yeah.
Of all the soft forces, right?
Yeah, right.
I'm going to be a SEAL.
I
can't swim.
I can't swim.
Not Ranger, not Green Beret. I'm going to go, but again, it's like, it's here's the goal. I'm going to work backwards from that and figure out a way around it.
And that's something I try to teach. I talk to my assistant about all the time and I try to teach young people all the time is, man, like, don't wait. You don't have to wait for anybody to get the job done.
Yeah.
Like you go do it.
Yeah.
And you are your only limit. You can only go as far as you allow yourself to go. You know?
So, with the help of a couple of people on the base that, help you both train and working with your schedule and stuff, excuse me, and then ultimately signing off on giving you orders there, excuse me, so you finally end up going to buds, you check in. And I thought it was cool that, that be someone special sign is something that your Aunt Doki used to say.
Yeah.
Was that kind of one of those almost divine moment type things?
No, absolutely. It was because, she would say that to me. She said that to me right when she gave me that money. And the fact that she said that to me, and then a year and change later, I'm seeing this sign.
And that sign's been there for 50 years.
Yeah, and I never knew that.
Yeah.
I never knew that. And then it was just like, what that said to me is, this is exactly where I need to be. This is the path. I was meant for this. I was made for this.
Yeah.
And that was my mindset when I got there and saw that sign throughout the whole process was I was meant to be here. And so, Yeah. She's awesome. She's still alive, by the way.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's fantastic. And, for those of you listening that are maybe a little unaware or not that familiar with that, there's this, really basic, simple wooden sign that just says, "Be someone special," in quotes. And as simple and basic as that may seem, like you see that sign and it overlooks the grinder, which is the massive square of concrete that everybody that's ever donned a trident has had their ass handed to them on over and over and over. And so, there's this green Freddy the Frog statue, and it says, "So you want to be a frogman" on it. And there's a wood sign above that says, "Be someone special." And so for all of us, like that strikes a pretty special thread with us. But
amen.
So, reading through, and again, something I didn't realize that you went to Buds and ultimately didn't make it the first time.
Yeah.
Because I remember as an instructor you were there, and I fucked your last name up. Do you remember me?
Yeah, of course I remember. Like, who doesn't remember their Buds instructors, man?
Well, there's certainly, there's times where like, yeah, fuck, I don't remember if you were there or not.
Yeah.
But yeah, so. But again, like when you were going through there the first time, that was actually coincidentally, I had gotten back from Iraq and had gotten valley fever and lost almost half of my lung capacity, and I was actually on convalescent leave the entire time that you were in Buds the first time.
Wow. I didn't know that.
And then became an instructor, and then was there when you came back. But so you got. Can you just walk us through a little bit of that the first time that you were there, where it ultimately kicked you in the nuts and sent you packing? What was that like?
Oh man, it sucked. I mean, I went through first phase twice, and then made it through Hell Week twice. yeah. I'm talking about the first run. Made it through Hell Week, and then I get to, I couldn't, the swimming thing, dude. The swimming thing kicked me in the nuts, man. Not knowing how to swim with fins, and then I got rolled 2 classes in order to learn how to swim. I'll never forget it. With Ryan Zink, he pulled me aside after I graduated Hell Week. He was like, "Now we're going to teach you how to swim," and they taught me how to swim, but those swim times dropped in dive phase from 85 minutes to 80 minutes, and I failed the first 2 swims, and then I went to pool week, and I failed the tread, and man, that sent me home packing, and it sucked, man. It sucked. I mean, it sucked, but at the same time, I looking back, it needed to happen. Yeah, I think that if I would have made it through, I'd have lost my mind. Yeah. It would have been too much power for me at that time. Yeah. But it sucked. It was because, as going through first phase and Hell Week and all of that stuff to get dropped. No, what I mean? It's
tough. I mean, and as an instructor, you it's an interesting dichotomy going from a student to being an instructor. And you see, guys that you're like, man, this motherfucker shouldn't be here. Yeah. That slip through the cracks, and and then there's other guys you're like, fuck, I would do anything to have that guy come to the teams. It's the unfortunate reality of the standard. But you also got pretty significantly sick and got medically rolled.
I got and during Hell Week, man. The first time I went through Hell Week, I almost died, dude. I had pneumonia, SIPE, rhabdo. My core temperature had dropped down at one point to 88.7. I got rewarmed and put back in Hell Week with pneumonia and SIPE, and almost died. I went, as we say in the teams, I went down hard, and I was in ICU for a few days after that. But the cool thing about it is, I'll never forget it, Master Chief Hoffman, when I got and Senior Chief Ford, when I got out of the hospital and got back to the barracks, Master Chief was like, he came into my room, he said, "That's the type of mother effer we look for. We look for a mother effer who's down and out. He's sick, he's dying, nobody knows him. We're kicking him in the balls over and over and over again, and he doesn't quit. Instead, he dies." And he's like, "You're going to be a frog man one day." Yeah. And then seeing she Ford, and he said, "Yeah, you did all. It was awesome, great, but you know what? You still got to start all over again."
And congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations, man. Yeah. So it was. But again, it was all of those things. Going back to the Bronx, man. I really feel like the Bronx, my upbringing, prepared me for all of that. Yeah. All of the stress that I endured as, growing up, going to high school, all these different things, really kind of, I don't want to say it was like water off my back, but it really did prepare me, the adversity and those setbacks, so.
But I think it's, it's probably hard for a lot of people to really wrap their mind around, the thought of going through part of Hell Week, getting medically rolled, and spent, a couple days in the ICU almost dying. Yeah. Go back, start first phase all over again, go through all over it again, make it all the way through Hell Week, go into second phase, and then get performance rolled out of second phase, and ultimately getting performance dropped. Yeah. And it's like, holy shit. Like, so then you go back to the Marines, and now you've got to spend time with them. Can you just kind of walk us through the time of the humbling time of getting sent back there and what that process was?
Yeah, it was I had to go through FMF school, so that was really it sucked. Share a story.
Fleet Marine Force.
Fleet Marine Force school, and it was cool at the same time because it wasn't buds, but we had to do like ruck humps and runs and PT and all that kind of stuff. And for me, coming out of buds, having made it to second phase, it was like a walk in the park for me. So I was really able to help serve the people. The instructors were big about, if you're faster and stronger, don't just run to the front and get it done. Like, stay with those who do not have the skills that you have and help them. Yeah. So that teamwork mentality. With Buds, Buds is a team-based program, in my opinion, but at the same time, a lot of those timed evolutions, they're individual. You have to pass your run. You have to pass your old course. Yeah. To a certain extent, you and your swim buddy have to pass your swim, but in FMF, it wasn't like that. It was like, no, everyone has to finish at the same time. And so it really taught me, the importance of going back and using the skills that you have to help those who can't help, who are struggling. Sure. So I had that period. I graduated from FMF school, and then from there, I got stationed at 1st Marine Division, Battalion 1-4 out in Camp Horno in the boondocks. And I remember I lived in San Diego because after while I was in Buds, I was in San Diego. And when I got orders to Camp Pendleton, I was like, part of me was like, it's not going to be bad. I could do this drive up to Camp Pendleton. But I didn't realize that I was going to be in Camp Horno, which is in a whole nother part of Camp Pendleton. So I had this crazy gnarly commute every day. But again, going through that adversity, it really forced me to train harder in order to prepare to get back to Buds. And so every day that I was with the Marines, whether we were, doing our workup, getting ready to deploy or on deployment or back from deployment, my mindset was get ready for Buds, get ready for the program.
Yeah. Well, the isolation piece in that environment actually is conducive to the focus. Yeah. And it's something I use all the time in dog training. It's something I preach to all of the, we'll call them students on my online training program is using crating and kenneling to isolate and neutralize, external stimuli so that you can get the dog to focus on you when you're training. And I don't think it's an accident that a lot of military installations are out in the middle of fucking nowhere for that reason, because there's no distractions. But so you go on a deployment with him, not much really happens. But one thing that struck me as interesting was the introduction, the first part of the introduction to kind of the spirituality and the meditation. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So my LPO, he was into like a lot of the Eastern philosophies and practices, and he was just different. He was just always so calm, and he was super respectful. It didn't matter what was going on. He was just like the calmest guy in the room, and I was attracted to that. Yeah. There were people who, if they were like that, like I would make fun of them. Yeah. But he was my LPO, so I couldn't really make fun of him. But at the same time, he was like different in the sense that I didn't even want to make fun of him. I just wanted to learn, hey, how can I get that same peace that you have? Mm-hmm. Specifically to help me when I do go back to the Buds, because I knew at some point I was going to go back. And so I kind of clung to him, and he began to teach me about, meditation and Eastern philosophies and practices and Zen and just all of these different things. And man, I took a hold of it so much so that when we got back from deployment, I joined, and I don't even want to call it a church, but there was like a gathering. They had like a gathering every Sunday at this yoga studio, and I would go and we would meditate and talk about life and talk about spiritual stuff, like spiritualism type stuff. And I was fully absorbed within it. But the cool thing about it was prior to that, again, I had fluctuated between atheism and agnosticism depending on the day of the week. But it was through that I began to open up towards faith.
Yeah.
Some, not any particular faith, just faith in general.
Yeah.
I wasn't like as closed door or closed minded to it as I was prior to my encounter with him.
Yeah. And so within that group, there was no real religious affiliation. It was all just more like meditation type.
Yeah, it was meditation, but there was a guy who he was in charge, and he would lead praise. So there was a religious aspect to it to a certain extent, but it wasn't as like, here's a Bible or here's a Quran or here's this. But there were certain bylaws and edicts that governed it to a certain extent. Yeah.
And so while you're back and you're getting ready to go to Buds 2.0, so you're still doing a little bit of the meditation stuff, but that's also when you meet Cecilia, who was a significant part of your life, ultimately introducing you to Christ in the manner in which that she did, which we'll throw back in here in a little bit. But that during that time, like it sounds like you were still kind of wavering a little bit in terms of nightlife and being out on the scene and things like that, and still not being obviously the way that you are now in terms of, super focused on faith and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Was that something that, kind of, I don't know, that you struggled with, or that impacted your preparation for getting back to Buds the second time?
What would you say? I'm sorry. What?
Like the lack of focus as it relates to your faith, even though you'd met Cecilia, like, there wasn't like you talk about kind of mocking church when you went with her the first time. Did that, lack of faith and kind of playing the field because you're on again, off again with her a little bit, did that distract you when you were getting ready to go?
No. Not at all.
Still focused?
I was stone cold focused. I was eagle eyed, man.
Yeah.
I didn't, whatever I needed to do to get the job done, everything else was irrelevant to a certain extent to me. So no, it didn't. Because I was just driven. I knew that this was my last shot, my absolute last shot. And I wasn't going to let anything, whether it be a woman, whether it be faith, whether it be anything, keep me from that goal.
Nothing was getting in the way.
No, not at all.
And so you end up getting to go back a little earlier than you were supposed to, right? Which, again, like there's some pivotal moments in your life where people really, really stuck their neck out for you and hooked you up, which is awesome.
And that's a theme, man. That's, that's I tried to be strategic in that and highlighting, what I call heroes of my life. I would not be where I'm at today without certain people coming into my life and, giving me that extra push in order to, giving me that help in order to get to where I am. And a goal in writing it that way was I want other people to realize that some people, they just need that help come into their life and give them that extra push, whatever. So.
And it seems like not in the way that you had originally thought, but she kind of played that role.
Yeah.
And so, you go back to Buds and essentially kick it in the ass, right?
Yeah,
went back and
moonwalk through it.
Like an MJ style.
Yeah, man.
And
still sucked.
What's that?
It still sucked.
Yeah, but I mean, you make it through and you graduate, and that's where. So you did mention the role in third phase. Is that where you came into the brown shirt program? And that's where I was one of your instructors.
Yeah. Ty Woods was there.
Yeah. And Mike maybe. Instructor Rideau.
Yeah, Rideau. Yeah. I can't remember if he was there. Yeah. Was he the corpsman in charge?
No, that would have been Ty. But
okay.
He and I it was either him or we'll call him Instructor C, because I think his brother's still on active duty. They're brothers that were there. But
I remember. I don't know if you remember this story, dude. When I was in Roback Land, like when I showed up, because everybody grows out their hair.
Yeah.
And buds, right? I don't know if you remember. Do you remember when I grew up? So I grew out my hair. I had like a fro, but with black people, when you mash your head down, it stays down.
Yeah.
And then, but the night before I checked into Roback Land, I went to a hairdresser, and this guy put, I don't know what it was, a perm, or he put like some type of chemical in my hair, so my hair blew out.
Fucking ultra perm in there.
Yeah, something crazy. My hair blew out, and so I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to check into Roback Land tomorrow. My hair's like literally like this long. What am I going to do? So I'm mashing it down the best I can, and nothing is working. And then I'm like, Roger that. I'm just hopefully we don't have a swim. And the first evolution of the day was the swim at the pool. And I remember I jump in the pool and I'm side stroking. Yeah. And the first phase instructor showed up. You were there. Ty Woods was there. And I'm looking, and as I'm side stroking, looking up, I see Ty Woods walk to my lane, and he's standing over my lane, pointing at me. And the rest of the Buds instructors walk over, and he points to me, and he says, "You." And then I finally pop my head up because my hair is just all over the place at this point. It's like covering my eyes. And he's like, "What kind of Black Panther SHIT stuff do you have going on? You get out the pool." I get hammered. We all go to the O course. The whole brown shirt rollback crew gets hammered, and then he makes everybody shave their head. Ty Woods makes everybody shave their head.
I didn't realize that was because of the incident with you, though. I remember. Yeah, he went fucking high order.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, that's some funny shit.
Yeah, man.
Rest in peace, Ty Woods.
Yeah, man. God bless the dead, man.
So you go back to Buds, essentially crush it. You did have the one. What did you get rolled for in third phase?
Demo.
Okay.
Yeah,
demolitions.
Demo. Yeah.
But ultimately end up graduating, and then I didn't realize you got injured in jump school after.
Yeah, man. It was like always something.
Christ, like you just keep taking heavies every step of the way.
Yeah.
And that was a significant injury, right?
I split the medial malleolus, which is in my ankle, which is the bone of stability in your ankle. I split it in half.
Yeah.
It was excruciating.
Yeah. And at that time, again, Cecilia was hooking you up, taking care of you and stuff. I do have to ask, just because I'm curious, like the earrings under the bed. Can you talk about that for a second?
Some girl, another girl. It was another guy. There was so many.
Was it
you know what? Actually, I do have an idea who it was. I think it was a neighbor that I was hooking up with, and she knew about Cecilia. And
she hooked you up.
And I think, she came up one day and, we did whatever we did. And then I truly believe that it was her. She put it in the bed. It was like,
on purpose?
Get you caught. Yeah.
That's
I'm almost positive.
Some rough stuff.
But hey, I had to pay the man, dude.
Yeah. So things kind of go back and forth with her. And, you end up essentially breaking up with her while you're at Kodiak, Alaska.
Yeah.
And that's actually the same time I was getting out of the Navy as when you were there. But what I found kind of transformational throughout this process is, you guys go back and forth, and then ultimately, when that happens, you guys finally break up. But you ask her not to take you back after you do, and she says no. But you ask her to take her to church.
Yeah.
And to me, that's kind of the premise of the title of the book of your entire story, and obviously that's a huge part of it. Can you speak to that day or night when she took you there and what that was like?
So that night, man, I was in anguish for so many different reasons. It kind of goes back to when I was in Kodiak, and I just started feeling this conviction. I was talking about it actually earlier today at the men's conference. I was feeling this. I was reflecting on my life. I was doing self-reflection. And as I reflected, I began to see how I treated my brother, my mother, how I treated people, how I treated Cecilia and all of these different people. And I didn't like what I saw. And it was something supernatural because it had never happened to me before, where I actually had a time to deeply reflect. And so when I got back home, and obviously we weren't together at this point, it wasn't just the breakup that was bothering me. It was just, I just felt this heavy weight of depression, like how can I atone for all of the things that I've done? How can I fix the wrongs? And I was trying on my own, and nothing that I was trying to do, but the meditation or other things were working. And so, I was in my room one night, and I felt this dark presence come into my room. It was tangible. I could feel it. I could see it. I could almost, I could taste it. It was just all around me. And I immediately called her, and I was just like, hey, listen, like I said, if you're not going to take me back, can you at least take me to church? Because I really need help. I need to try something. If this church God thing is real, I need to try that. And she said, okay, I won't take you back, but I'll take you to church. And, we went to church that next day, and I can't tell you anything that the pastor preached. All I could tell you was that I was broken. I truly believe that God had to break me down to the lowest common denominator in order for me to cry out to him. You know what I mean? Like I was just so hardened over the years and years of life that I had lived. And that was, I think, that whole situation was what brought me to my knees again and went to church. And can't tell you anything the preacher preached, but at the end of the sermon when he said, does anyone want to try this faith? Does anyone want to give their life to Christ? That's when I was like, I'll try it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'll give it to college. Try.
I'll see what happens. And and in reality, for me, everything changed.
Yeah.
Like I felt peace. I began to be able to give up the habits that I had for so many years. For me, I'll just speak frankly, like sexual addiction was a big thing for me, whether it was either pornography or it was either women sleeping around with women, and for 10 years and like through prayer and everything, I was delivered from that, and I lived a celibate life until I got married, and obviously, but yeah, things began to change. I mean, all the team guys, all the guys who knew me,
like, what the fuck's wrong with you?
Yeah. They knew how I used to be. They was like, what's going on with this dude? Like, Remi was a heathen. He was a barbarian. Like, what's happening? And I would just tell him, man, Jesus happened to me, dude. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but I don't have the taste for the things that I used to have. And I just want to, just be at peace and help people and just, yeah, man.
Yeah. Well, the asshole team guy skeptic.
Yeah.
In me when I'm reading that, like, well, okay, if you're not going to take me back, at least take me to church. I'm thinking that's a pretty slick, like sliding into the DMs kind of move.
Yeah,
like,
no, absolutely.
Like there was some of that there.
Yeah, there was a part of it that was, a part of me was, maybe if she sees me in this environment and she sees a change, that will work. So there was a part of me that absolutely 100%.
Yeah.
But then there was another part of me that was, because my brother had been a Christian for a long period of time. And I remember I used to make fun of him. I used to mock him. I used to call him names. I used to call him, you stupid, for following that fake God and all of this stuff. And my brother, he would always tell me, hey, Remi, I'm praying for you, whatever. And so yeah, man, I forgot where I was going. What was the question?
Well, just that it seemed like there was kind of a maybe a little bit of a hidden agenda.
Got it. So my brother would tell me, he would tell me that, he said, when you hit rock bottom, because Remi, you're gonna hit rock bottom one day. Like, it's gonna happen. Like, God's got a plan for your life, and He's gonna hammer you one day. And he said, when it happens, cry out to Jesus.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not gonna judge you. I'm gonna let you do whatever you, but cry out to Jesus. And so there was a part of me that was like, I want to do this for her, but then there was another part of me like, maybe my brother was right. Let me see what happens. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, I mean, it's definitely a very. I mean, you can tell in the book it's extremely pivotal.
Yeah.
In your life, and again, I mean, coming from that same community, like that kind of paradigm shift in a team guy, going from how most are to kind of striking a polar opposite is pretty, it's a neat transformation to see.
Absolutely.
And, coincidentally, that's almost kind of a rebirth within the community too. And then you graduate buds, you heal up from the jump school injury, and now you're getting ready to check into Team 3, my alma mater.
Yeah.
If you could, just for obviously I know what that's like, but if you could, for the listeners, kind of describe what that was like with the backdrop, everybody listening, and realize that this was at a time where, sustained combat operations in Iraq and Afghanistan have been going on for years, and the guys that were there that you were checked into was almost like, holy shit, like kind of meeting, almost like idols, and that Chris Kyle and Jocko, man, and all these other guys. Like, can you kind of explain that?
Yeah, man, it was surreal, man. It was surreal, walking through the hallways that first day when I was checking in, and walking through the hallways and just seeing the pictures on the walls of frogmen getting after it in battle, man, and I'm here. And how did I get here? Like, oh, this is awesome. It was like I was living a dream, and then going up and into the platoon space and meeting Chris Kyle, you know what I mean, and he's right there, and I've heard all of these stories about him, and here I am, this kid from the Bronx. You know what I'm saying, this kid from the Bronx who should have never been here, standing right there in front of this dude. So it was surreal. It was definitely a blessing. And again, it was that moment where I was just like, this is exactly where I need to be. I'm in the right place. I made the right decisions to get to where I'm at today. You know?
Yeah, no, it's neat to read that, and it strikes a moments that are very reminiscent for me and nostalgic, frankly, of being in the hallways of Team 3 and the crew of guys that came from that era. It's neat to read about.
Yeah.
As you kind of get your feet wet at the team and get ready to go on your first deployment, you kind of find yourself in the role of one of the ways you put it that I thought was hilarious is from player to pastor. And kind of taking on almost like a chaplain role, in the platoons and in the teams. Can you talk a little bit about that feeling of responsibility to be that for your guys?
Yeah, it was cool because it was something that I never advocated for. It was something that came out of nowhere. My platoon chief, he had seen me. He would see me reading the Bible. I was the guy that I wouldn't go into the strip club, but I was the guy that was like, drive to the strip club, drop the boys off, and be like, yo, I'm here. Shoot me a text whenever you're ready. And I would sit in my car and chill out. You know what I mean? I was the guy that was always the designated driver. And, I would go into the bar, and when dudes about to get after it, I would be there ready for them, not judge them, pull them out, and get in the car and go. And so my platoon chief and leadership, they saw that, and they saw how dedicated I was to my walk with God. And so right before the deployment, that's when my platoon chief pulled me aside and said, hey, dude, like, I want you to be we're deploying to a self-sustaining base. We're going to be in the middle of nowhere. We're not going to have chaplains. We're going to be on our own in this fob. Would you be the lay leader? And I was just like, what, me? Like, I don't know anything, but yeah, it was definitely humbling. It was a big responsibility. I would say a huge responsibility, because, I had to study, the Bible more, and it forced me to study. So I began to study apologetics, prophecy, all of these different things in order to be able to hermeneutics and all of these different, in order to be able to articulate the scriptures as guys wanted it. And at the same time too, like, we would have church service. If we weren't on ops on Sundays, I would have church service because we did the vampire hours where we would sleep during the daytime and work only at night. So we would have church service in the evening on Sundays and Wednesdays. And if we didn't have it, then if we didn't have an operation, then I would be leading church service, man. Yeah. And sometimes it was like 2 of us in the room. Sometimes it was like 8 dudes. It would fluctuate, but it was a good time. And, I grew a lot from that spiritually. And that's actually where my devotional book that I'm writing now kind of came from. I call it Letters from the Wilderness, because that's when I began to write these written sermons that I would actually send back home, and they weren't talking about missions. They weren't anything, SEAL related. They were just sermons where I would take a scripture and break down the scripture and send it out, So I learned a lot from a ministry perspective.
So it's safe to say that the more dangerous and hairy shit was, the more guys would show up at the
you know what? Before every op, we would pray. Everybody showed up for that.
You're damn right.
Well, everybody showed up for that. But I want to say, I would just say it was consistent where you would have mixed bag every week.
Yeah,
so.
no, I'm just fucking with you.
I know.
Or fucking with the guys, I guess, more than anything.
Yeah.
But all right, so you go to the self-sustained FOB, and you start basically conducting and engaging human operations. And I know this is where there's a lot of things that can't really be discussed. But there's a couple things, and this may seem a little long-winded, but what I kind of drew from seeing your natural, I guess, ability to conduct those type of operations, and at one point you're imitating Chris Tucker to smooth shit over, which is a funny story in itself. But there's an element of a mix of both the training that you received within Naval Special Warfare in conjunction with the Bronx upbringing, street smarts. Like, when you combine those two things, it seems like it's a natural fit, and those things kind of played an equal role in your operational success.
No, absolutely, 100%. Going back to Bronx, it prepared me for that role, because growing up in where I grew up, you meet people who are BS, and you meet the guys who are. You meet the real deal dudes who will shoot you in the face immediately if you disrespect them or step on their shoes. Mm-hmm. Then you meet the cats that are going to talk, and they're going to peacock, but they're never going to do anything. Yeah. And then there's a wide spectrum of people in between. And so when you've lived in that type of culture for so many years, you learn how to read people. Mm-hmm. Like, you really, really learn how to read people. My buddy Ricardo, he says in one of the cutting room floor videos, he said, people from the Bronx, it's hard for them to trust people it takes time for you to build trust in certain people, but that's also true. So anyway, that wide spectrum of people that I encountered over my years in the Bronx, it really helped me to quickly evaluate people when I was conducting those type of operations. So I was able to say, come on, dude, I'm from the streets, man. You ain't fooling, you lying, bro. Like, I know the game. Or I could tell when somebody seemed like they were lying, but they were telling the truth. But they seemed like they were lying because of the fear. They had fear. So it was easy for me to evaluate and read and then, play the good cop, because I had my fair share of run-ins with the police, and I had the warrants and all that kind of stuff. So they were things that I took from those encounters that I was able to kind of interject. But yeah, it prepared me. It was a perfect storm between the training and then my upbringing. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because to draw back to dogs, because that's what I do, and a lot of people listening, listen because of the interest in dogs. But the two components that really, I think, parallel that are the body language, nonverbal communication, because that's everything with dogs. Like reading a dog and being self-aware enough, just like on the street, like carrying yourself a certain way when you need to carry yourself a certain way, and backing that off at sometimes. But the other side of that coin is that ability to read people and interact with them and have a kind of a gut feeling like that. To me, that's kind of like the nature aspect. It's not so much the nurture, even though a lot of it's growing up. Like that's true. That can't really be taught.
No, absolutely, that's true.
And because you grew up, with that environment, for years of having to deal with people where it is life and death and people are struggling, is very similar to how it is in a lot of places we go and operate.
Absolutely, downright, absolutely. And it's helped me tremendously now in Hollywood. Oh, I bet. Because in Hollywood, I'll sit and Brad would talk about the other day. I had a meeting the other day, and this dude was doing this thing on a call, and I was just like, this guy is full of it, man. Yeah. Immediately, the first 5 minutes, I was just like, I got this guy figured out. And we go to meetings all the time and in Hollywood and deal with, and it's the same thing. Within minutes, I already got them all figured, and they don't know it, so they just keep
playing the game,
playing themselves. And then I play the fool of, sometimes you got to play the fool of one who thinks they fooling you, right? Yeah. So I get caught up in that.
Yeah. So in that deployment, I thought it was pretty cool if you could talk about the Abu Karim alias, as well as basically chasing a known tango or terrorist, Umar Zahid, most of the deployment. Yeah. If you can kind of walk us through that deployment and share any stories. I know people always love to hear what you can share about some of the things you did on that cruise.
Yeah, well, what, to be honest with you, the DOD just cleared my book last week, and so there's some things that I probably can't really talk about just yet, just because I want to be careful and I don't want to end up in a bad situation. Because I just got my redactions back. I got you last week. So
is anything that I just said in the redacted form?
No. Okay. You were pretty clean on the this stuff. So all
right. Well, so we'll leave it at that. Yeah. My synopsizing,
which is crazy because it took them 8 months. As it took them 8 months to do.
Yeah, it's nutty. And then some of the things they take out, you're like, who gives a shit? Exactly. And other things you're like, you left that in.
Exactly, and that's a great point.
I mean, it's mind boggling sometimes, but. So I guess stop me if any of this is. Redacted or too sensitive to talk about, but ultimately you end up share what you can, I guess, so that I don't step on it.
Yeah, long story short, just to kind of be careful. Tracked this guy for a long period of time. We were conducting other operations, but he was an HVT high value target, and we had been tracking him. I've been conducting my human operations, which is intelligence collection, which I could say, for the record. Yeah. And a lot of that led to us capturing this guy and leading to other stuff. There's so much, as there was so much other stuff I couldn't talk about in the book that I just knew wouldn't get cleared. Yeah. So, that's the gist of it.
Can you talk a little bit about why he was a high value target? I know, he was a motherfucker at the highest magnitude.
Yeah. He controlled, can I say the group name on here?
Sure.
Yeah,
you can say anything. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, I didn't know for clearance purposes.
Oh, no, nobody's monitoring my shit.
Yeah,
they'll get told to fuck off.
Okay, he was one of the top leaders in a terrorist group, Al Qaeda at that point, and so he had a large contingent of people who worked for him. He had an entire city in pocket where he could roam and do whatever he wanted to do. The cops were in his pocket. Everybody, politicians were all in his pocket, and he was a bad dude. He was responsible for a lot of deaths, a lot of suicide bombing attacks. Kids, a lot of kids got. There was a. I won't go into the detail, but it's essentially due to an operation that we did, he ended up, having an entire family killed, 2 little kids who were part of it. So he was a bad dude. And, like people ask me all the time, they say, man, how could you be a Christian and be a SEAL? Like, that doesn't make sense. And I'm like, hey, dude, listen, God has created warriors. And you look at the Bible, there are people who go protect those who can't protect themselves from oppressors and from the wicked. And I dealt, as you know the deal. We've dealt with some very, very wicked people who do evil things, and this guy was just one of them. He had no regard for other people's lives, and he had no problem saying that person right there, have him and his entire family killed, and it happened. So that's why he was an HVT, and I didn't mind doing all the work that I had to do to make sure that dude went away.
No, it's good shit. And ultimately, you guys nab him.
Yeah.
So you come back from that deployment, and this is one of those instances I actually laughed out loud reading it. It was when you said that you went on fucking Match, was it Match?
Match.com, man.
Trying to find.
They better give me an endorsement deal. Jockey already gave me an endorsement deal. Match, where you at, man? We pumping you in the book, dude.
Like fucking Match of all things. I
met my wife on Match.com.
Yeah. That is priceless. But I also found it funny that the first date you guys go on is basically a flop, right? I mean,
yeah. We weren't into each other at all. It was just one of those things where I wasn't feeling her, she wasn't feeling me. I had no plans on. And she's a beautiful girl, beautiful woman. Yeah. A doctor. Very well established. But just the vibes weren't there. And I had made up in my mind, I'm never going to see this girl again. I hope she doesn't call me. And she ends up calling me for a salmon dinner after she had felt the same way too. I guess she was just lonely. She told me, she was like, she eventually confessed to me later. She was like, yeah, I was lonely and I just wanted to hang out with somebody I was new in town. So that's why I called you back. And that night is when she really opened up to me. She kind of took off the mask. When people go on a date or whatever, they wear this mask and to impress the other and all this other stuff. And she really opened up. And when she did, I was able to see her heart. And after I saw that, I was like, wow, like this is a woman I could spend the rest of my life with. And we've been married for going on 8 years. Yeah. We got married, just like my dad and my mom, we got married 5 months after. Yeah. We got married 5 months after. At the same month. We met around the same time my mom and dad met. And we got married the same month my mom and dad got married. I didn't know that until after, until 2 years after we were married. Oh, I was like, me and your dad got married in November after we met. And I was like, really?
No doubt. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So, it was all because you offered a fucking salmon dish, right?
Yeah, salmon. I told her I could cook. I learned how to cook, I learned how to cook. So I was like,
the cursory salmon dish.
Yeah.
All right, so you guys end up, she reaches back out, you guys end up getting married, and you're getting ready, you get kind of a shotgun wedding almost, right before another deployment.
Yeah.
And this is something I can certainly relate to. Well, actually, before I get into that, is there anything from that deployment that you can share?
No, that's why it was the length that it was, because it was
almost a fucking afterthought.
The crazy thing was I shortened it because I knew a lot of it would be redacted if I mentioned it, but the DOD redacted stuff in that part of the book, which I was shocked. So
I'll give the old air quotes or the wink, I guess. But, but I guess the point I was going to make is that something that I can relate to is that at that point now you've got 2 young sons, right?
Yeah, 2 boys, man.
And so you're at a crossroads life-wise where you can stay in and and keep being gone 300 plus days a year, and you know, riding the dangerous fence that we ride as you know.
Well, the kids came after that deployment. So the kids came after I got back from the deployment is when the kids were born in.
But I guess, I mean, in terms of you're at that crossroads.
Got it. My bad.
Once you have the kids, do I stay in? Do I get out? You know, type of thing. And I was faced with a similar decision with these two little heathens over here. Is that you know, they were, you know, fresh out of the womb basically, and I was kind of forced with that same or presented with that same decision. Yeah. And you know, we both made kind of a similar one. I am curious to get the mentality that you had, the thought process as you were getting ready to get out, as to what ultimately made you decide, you know what, I am gonna fucking bail and get out.
Yeah. So my first son was born in 2014, and my second was 2015, and you know, again, my dad die at such a young age. You know, I just knew that, you know, I was still in the teams. You know, I still had my first son. I still had 2 years, man, in, you know, after my first son, and then it just came down to I needed to be home, man. Yeah. I needed to be a dad, dude. I just wanted to. I didn't want my kids to go down any of the roads that I went down because I was absent, even though they were young at the time. You know, I just wanted to be there, and I wanted to experience fatherhood. You know, as much as I could. You know,
was it a hard decision?
I mean, it was extremely hard. You know, it was extremely hard. You know, when I got out in 2016, you know, I graduated from Buds in 2007, and you know, and you know, I've been in the. You know, I achieved this dream. You know, I got to, you know, go overseas, do cool things, and the brotherhood, you know, and just being around great guys. And I knew that I would be giving that up. And I knew that once I got out, there was going to be no turning back. Yeah. And so for me, it was hard. It was extremely hard. I went through spouts of depression at times. Yeah. But I knew that I had to do it I knew I was doing it for the right reason. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it ended up working out because I got out in January. I know it's crazy. I got out January of 8th of 2016. And then interestingly, 2 months later, I was invited on a trip to Israel with the Gifford family, Kathleen Gifford and her family, and I went with them. And then I got back from that. That trip, and I got the phone call for Transformers. Yeah. So, and I couldn't have done the whole Transformers deal if I was in grad school at the time as well, but I couldn't have done the Transformers deal if I was still in. So yeah. Did you find like it was? I mean, for myself and for most vets that I talk to, especially, you know, at a higher level of operational capacity, such as special operations, is that there's an element of a little bit of drifting. You know, when you first get out, is that you kind of lose that identity a little bit of. You're used to being a SEAL for years, you know, and being, you know, revered on bases and you know, respected just because of the uniform that you're wearing and things like that. And that you're an active duty team guy, and now all of a sudden you're not. Yeah. You know, and it's like, you know, it opens some doors, but ultimately people don't really give a shit. I mean, not more than, oh, that's cool, tell me about it, you know. So did you find that there was an element of that? Or? No, because you know what, you know, my identity was I tried to not have my identity rooted in that. Yeah. You know, as a person of faith, you know, we have a saying, you know, have your identity rooted in Christ. So I tried to make sure that my identity was rooted in Christ. So when that went away, it wasn't. I didn't feel that at all. Yeah. I can't say that there was any wavering or any of that or feeling bad. I was just like, okay, now the next mission is finding a way to provide for my wife and my kids so that my kids have a better life than I had. Yeah, you know, and so but
I mean that's a refreshing perspective, no doubt about it. So it says a lot about you know, the relevance faith plays in your life, no doubt about it. Because I know, like I said, for me and for I think most vets that takes place where guys are like, fuck, now what? You know, like I'm not who I used to be, and it's kind of an uncharted territory thing. Yeah. But, all right, so Transformers takes place with Michael Bay and leads to more more acting. Can you give us a rundown on what that was like, doing movies and commercials and stuff like that?
It was cool, man. It was cool. And the crazy thing about it is, again, people ask me all the time, how did you get into acting? I tell them I never got into acting. Acting got into me. I never wanted to do acting. I wasn't thinking about doing acting. You know, I just got the phone call, and it was an amazing experience, you know, being on Transformers, working with Anthony Hopkins and Mark Wahlberg and Josh Duhamel and all of these people who are legends in acting for the first time. And then that it just opened up more doors for me. And it's funny because I remember we were shooting Transformers, and a buddy of mine said to me, he said, Remi, what are you going to do? Are you going to keep pursuing this? I was like, absolutely not, dude. I'm 30. I think I was 34 at the time. I'm 34. I got 2 kids. I can't drop everything and move to Hollywood to be an actor. He's like, man, like no one gets an opportunity like this. You should keep pursuing it. Yeah. And so I pretty much told him no. And then fast forward, we were on set in London and for Transformers and Mark Wahlberg. He just gave me like a small sentence of encouragement, man. He was like, man, you're doing a good job. Like, so, and then another actress in there, I forgot her name. She pulled me aside. She's like, Remi, you need to keep doing this. And so it was those 2 things that really kind of inspired me to go get some actual formal training. So when I got done with Transformers, I actually started going to the acting school because I said, if I'm gonna do this, I need to you know, have the proper training for it. And at the same time, I got booked for 2 commercials. And then a few months later, I received a phone call for somebody who was connected to Jockey, and he was like, hey, Jockey wants to sign you to an endorsement deal. Do you mind flying to Amsterdam to shoot a commercial in your underwears? I was like, sure, you guys cut the check. I'll be there. And I'm in Amsterdam and my skivvies and a whole bunch of different color skivvies. And you know, shooting a commercial and then, you know, and then, you know, doors just began to open up for me. And it was actually through Transformers that I got approached by HarperCollins via Kathy Lee Gifford when I went on the Today Show to promote Transformers. She pulled me aside and she said, hey, Remi, like, your story is too remarkable. You need to write a book. And I was like, no, I'm not writing no book. And she said, why won't you write a book? I was like, do you know what will happen to me in the teams if I write a book? I mean, you know, dude. I know. And I was just, and she was like, yeah, but where's your heart? I was like, well, my heart would be to inspire and help people. She said, okay, then you need to write a book from that perspective. Yeah. And so she walked me to HarperCollins and you know, after the Today Show, and I signed a book deal with them, man. And so doors just began to open up, and you know, so it's been a blessing. It's allowed me to you know, travel more of the world, even though I traveled the world before in the military, and it's, you know, it's just opened up opportunities for me to be, because storytelling is a big part of who I am. It was through storytelling that, you know, when you look back on my story, it was through storytelling that the trajectory of my life changed. It was through film, you know, and so being able to now be in this environment, be in this profession where I could through story possibly inspire other people to change or to reach higher, you know, that it's a blessing to be able to be in this field, you know?
No, I mean, the ability and platform to spread whatever message you want in that position is priceless. No doubt about it.
Absolutely.
The one quick question on the Transformers thing I was curious of is how long was that process that you were filming and involved with? Was it a couple of months?
Yeah. So I started in May, the end of May. This is when I was on set for the first day, and then it was just supposed to be that one day. Yeah. And then 2 weeks later, you know, I get a phone call from production, and they're like, "Hey, Bay wants you to come back for 3 weeks." So I fly to Arizona for a week, film out there, and then I fly to Michigan for 2 weeks. And at the end of the 2 weeks, production approached me again, and they said, "Hey, Bay wants to keep you on until we wrap." And I was like, "Sure." So I started in May, and we wrapped in December. That's So I filmed in California, Arizona, Michigan, and London. You know,
that's good shit.
And San Diego. Yeah.
Did you ever approach Bay and tell him that you saw? The 2 movies.
Yeah. So after filming had wrapped, I had wrote a letter, and I was kind of hesitant to share it with him because you know, a person of that stature, you know, they get people who send them letters and stuff, and it's just like whatever. And so, you know, I wrote a letter, and I didn't want to send it to him, but a buddy of mine was like, "Man, you need to." Again, your heart's in the right place. You need to, you know, send this letter to him so he knows, you know, how he's influenced you. And so, you know, once we were completely wrapped, I sent it to him, and he was just like, This is actually framed in his office.
No
now.
shit.
Yeah.
Damn, that's
the letter
cool.
I wrote, man. I just wrote how, share a bit of my story and how his films inspired me to be a frogman and and how being a frogman changed the trajectory of my life, and I told him, I just encouraged him, keep doing what you're doing because it's helping people.
Yeah, man, that's pretty neat. I mean, to be framed in the dude's office like at, I mean, he's got all sorts of cool shit. That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
One of the neatest parts of the book, I thought, and it was something I was thinking about throughout reading it, was, I was planning on asking, have you gone back, to Lagos, or have you thought about it, whatever. And to hear that at the end of it was pretty neat. The biggest thing that I was curious of is that when knowing what you knew about your father from your mother's perspective and families of what they had told you. Was there an element of bittersweetness being there and seeing Banana Island and all of this? I mean, and I won't spoil. There's a ton of other elements in the book. I try to walk that line of not talking about too much, but also giving people a good idea. But to know the blood, sweat, and tears and hard work and passion that your dad brought to that we'll call it the Lagoon Project, to ultimately have this enormous piece of property that was ultimately worth fucking billions.
Billions now.
Was there a bittersweetness being there?
It was sad. I went to the island. This, I could kind of touch on this because the book was actually supposed to end with me with the whole entire description of all the emotions I felt when I was on the island, but I kind of went in a different direction. But yeah, man, when I was on my dad's island, this island that's now worth billions of dollars that he developed, it was just like, in my mind, I was just like, you did all of this, but your family has no access to it. It was just one of those feelings like this, in a sense, and it's not a happy ending because it was like all of this was almost for nothing. Yeah. Because somebody else now has it, and your own family, and a lot of your family has struggled because we haven't been able to have this. Mm-hmm. But the blessing in it all is, the way I look at it is I am that Banana Island in a sense. Yeah. Because if he didn't die and the things didn't happen the way they happened, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. Yeah. I wouldn't, because all my dad was married before he married my mom, and he got divorced, and all my older siblings, they all lived the luxurious life. They all went to boarding school in London. All of them had British accents because they were all sent to boarding school.
I can't imagine you with a fucking British accent.
Yeah, right. And so when I look at it, like it's almost like his death and the loss of that led me to where I am, that created me. Yeah. So it was kind of bittersweet, but it is what it is, and it's sad that it's just the court case is still open.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah.
So there is a chance that
there's a chance. My brother, and he, my half brother, who's a lawyer, I think about a year ago they offered him some millions of dollars, but he's like, no, dude, like this island is worth billions of dollars. Yeah. You know what I mean? Why would I take a few million for something that's worth billions of dollars? So the case is still open. Yeah. There's entire court files on it, and there's a lawyer active. There are two lawyers actively still fighting the case. No shit. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Is there any element in terms of your family is concerned in fear of retribution from their government with this book coming out? Not really?
No. I personally don't think so.
Yeah. Or it affecting the case, I guess.
I think that it's going to help the case because right now in Nigeria, I mean, historically Nigeria, and this is something that I'm not saying flippantly, Nigeria has been a very corrupt country. Mm-hmm. Corruption is something that is well known amongst the Nigerian people, and the people of Nigeria are very fed up with the corruption. And right now they're going through a new presidential election cycle, and that's one of the main selling points on the docket. I will rid corruption forever. So what I think will happen is I think that when this book comes out and Nigerians in the UK and the US and Nigerians in Nigeria read it and it gets the exposure that it's going to get, I think that it's going to help our case. Yeah. I personally think it's going to help our case.
Almost like a grassroots uncovering of the travesty that took place.
Exactly. I think that the people are going to stand up, and all of the people who have been involved in the case, I think they're going to rise up, and that, the only reason why it's going to happen is because of because of who I am in a sense. Oh, Remi, this Navy SEAL, this actor, his family was done so bad. We need to do the right thing now. We're going to look bad. I think that might happen. Now, I could be wrong.
But I hope
we'll see what happens. If it does, I'll be a billionaire. I'll cut you a check for $1 million.
I'll come to Banana Island and hang out.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm curious of is that one of the contacts that you had there, and I'll save the swimming story with the young man for people to read the book. But what I am curious about is you learned a lot about your dad that you didn't know on that trip, and we don't have time to go over all of it. But is there something that you could share that kind of surprised you the most, or that you were most proud of that you learned about him that you didn't know once you went back to?
Oh man, there's so much, man. I learned about him being one of the first black men on the board of the World Trade Center.
Yeah,
I didn't know that before I went there. As well as there's this major financial exchange in London. He was one of the first black men on the board for that. So those were things that I learned being there. The island, man. Like when I left Nigeria in '87, the island was pretty much developed, but it didn't have the houses and the buildings and just all of the things that are on it now. So one thing that I did learn, the scope of this project, that like how big it was, because as a kid I heard the stories where your dad built an island. I'm thinking an island like what the size of a house, an island, but actually you have to driving through this island and how strategic he was in placing it where it was, and the technology that was built into the island for future, to essentially build this island as a massive like business epicenter. I didn't fully grasp that until I was on the island and I'm driving around and I'm just like, this place is amazing.
Like way ahead of his time.
Way ahead of his time. Awesome. So yeah, that was the biggest thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it sounded like an amazing kind of almost homecoming kind of trip, but no, great stuff.
Thank you.
As we kind of wrap up here, because I know you guys are a little bit short on time, what now in terms of what Remi's doing?
Yeah, so now I'm a few things. I just finished up 6 Underground consulting and doing a little acting on that. That comes out in July. My book is coming.
Do you have a release date?
May 14th.
May 14th.
May 14th. So I'm not sure when you're going to release this, but
it'll be probably in conjunction with that, maybe a little sooner. But we'll make sure that it's similar, so that it's not too early.
Yeah. So May 14th, and then I'm writing a film. I wrote a film. Called The Chameleon. It's based off of a chapter, very loosely based off of a chapter in the book called The Chameleon. Yeah. And so right now that's being sent around to different production companies and studios, and hopefully we should have a deal on that soon.
Where can we find you, social media, website wise, if people want to see what's going on?
Yeah, so Remi Adeleke, Adeleke. Remi is with an I, not a Y. So you can find me on that name on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. My website for the book is transformededstory.com, so you can get tons of information on the book, or you can even pre-order the book. If you haven't pre-ordered the book, go ahead and pre-order the book right now. I'm on YouTube as well. My YouTube channel is Transform Book. As a matter of fact, if you pre-order the book, we're releasing cutting room floor stories to the general public, but we also have cutting room floor stories. These are all stories that didn't make it into the book. We have exclusive stories that are only being released to those who pre-order. So go ahead and get your pre-order on, and those are the places you can find me.
Well, amen.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. Anything you want to add before we close it down?
Yeah, man. I want to thank you once again for having me, brother Mike. It's crazy that you were my BUD/S instructor, and now we're sitting here like over a decade later conversating. But yeah, man, I appreciate this. I appreciate what you do, getting the word out there, and yeah, man, everybody out there, keep getting after it. Where it looks like there is no way, find a way, because there is a way. Don't quit, don't give up, and keep pushing.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's good, great messages, and for all the listeners, before we wrap up here, the book is called Transformed, and for the YouTube assholes, go ahead and this is what the cover looks like.
Yeah,
pretty ominous cover. It's badass, and like I said, the book, it was an easy book to not put down. It was really fascinating and not what I expected in a lot of good ways. Again, not that I had bad expectations, but really fascinating, great stories, really great message. And, for anybody out there that has been dealt a shit sandwich or is unsure of their path, or otherwise, I encourage you to pick the book up. It's fantastic. And we will release this. Again, it'll be somewhat in conjunction with when it comes out, but you can always pre-order it, which I would actually recommend doing as soon as it comes out. But
yes, thank you, brother.
I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule for coming, and as always, thank you for your service. Appreciate everything that you and all the guys. It's neat to see guys that went through training when I was an instructor getting out and kicking ass and taking names. So
thank you, brother.
I'm proud of you, man.
Thank you,
Very
brother.
much.
Appreciate you.
All right, one quick kind of housekeeping note in terms of the products. I just want to fill everybody in real quick. TeamDog.pet is the online training one-stop shop. It's a good resource. Anybody who owns a dog, do yourself and your dog, and frankly, everybody that your dog pisses off a favor, and go on TeamDog.pet. Sign up for the online training. It's $100 a year, and you will thank me for it. CBD oil, again, for both pets, it's available for both pets and people. It's available in chicken liver flavor at 200 milligram, as well as the key lime pie full spectrum at 500 milligram, and lemon lime isolate at 500 milligram. So I like to take the isolate in the morning, the full spectrum at night. And I do the same thing for all the pets. TrichoSupplements.com is where you're going to find that.
I got to get some of that for myself.
Yeah, I'll send you some.
Yeah.
The one of the things that we're adding into the website is a first aid kit, a canine first aid kit, as well as a training certificate process within the online training, so you can actually take quizzes and a test to get a certificate, which is something that we're just starting to offer, as well as a first aid and canine CPR certification in that process as well. So again, go to teamdog.pet and check that out. RayAllen.com has our collars and leashes available, the Trichos collar and leash, which is something I developed in conjunction with Working Dog Dry Goods, and now it's available on, again, RayAllen.com for that. We've got some dog food and treats coming out, as well as a dog crate that I designed with a dog crate company that are coming out real soon that we'll share as soon as they're available. Before we go, I want to again thank Remi for coming. It's been great having you here, and I love what I learned out of the book. Ultimately, I want to thank the listeners, because if it were not for your guys' support, we wouldn't be here flapping our gums and sharing our stories with you guys. So you guys continue to humble me and my team here, who is an integral part of this process, and I would not be where I'm at without them and the support of a lot of people, frankly. So thank you to all you guys, especially, again, you, the listeners. And until next time, this is Mic Drop.